Welcome to Makerspace Podcast. My name is Ray Craggy.
And I'm Ian Charnas.
And today we'll be talking about dealing with difficult people. At a Makerspace, you don't know what you'll encounter. You'll find new surprises every day.
So we want to give you an idea or a flavor for what kinds of things we're talking about. For example, a 3D printed part has failed, and it's due to user error. There was a problem with their file, but the user doesn't want to own up to it, or they think that through some magic, it wasn't their fault and they shouldn't have to pay for it. That's a difficult user.
Another difficult user may want constant hand-holding. They don't want to work on their own. They don't want to use your reference materials. It's almost like they expect you to do the project for them.
The moment you walk away, they've paused, and they're just waiting for you to come back. They won't do it on their own. Another one, classic one, every Makerspace manager knows this. The user, 5 minutes before you're closing for the day, they start a 1-hour laser etching job. And what do they say? They say, it's just going to be 5 minutes. Everything's just 5 minutes until it's 2 hours.
And that's why you install timers. Another difficult user may be one who didn't realize that they didn't have the money to pay for the materials that they were purchasing.
It could be a user has a deadline and they're freaking out. They come to you, hey, this is due tomorrow. I have to get this done, right? All my problems onto you. You're going to have to stay late. I need to jump ahead in the queue, right? People can get pretty pushy when it comes towards the end of the semester at a university. And also when they're under a lot of stress, people can tend to freak out.
Perhaps the user is experiencing some technical issues. Say your CNC router failed in the middle of someone's job, and they were in a crunch, and now they won't be able to finish their assignment before your space closes.
We had a really good example of that at our Makerspace. We had a user who was designing a patch to go on an art project, and he was nonplussed, let's say, because the embroidery machine was broken on the day that he came in. Did he wait until the last 2 days of the semester to do this work? Of course. But was he expecting the machine to be out of service? No. He was expecting that he could show up the second to the last day and get his job done.
Or maybe you're dealing with users who are running a small business, selling coasters on Etsy out of your shop when that's against the policy, when it's not supporting the mission that you've set forward for your space.
So those are some examples from our space. We also reached out to a popular mailing list, SSMC. I hope you're on that list already. If not, come join the party. SSMC, of course, stands for Student Shop Manager Consortium, and it's where all of your peers are exchanging tips and best practices right now. So join that list. We reach out to the list to ask our fellow Makerspace managers, what difficult users do you see in your space? What difficult situations have you run into? And we've got some really good examples from the list to share here as well.
Mike Collins of the University of Illinois shared a story about a student who was breaking glass bottles on the loading dock as part of a performance art piece. Mike had to have a difficult conversation with that student, helping them understand that that was not something that they could be doing as part of that makerspace.
Melissa Goldman from the University of Virginia wrote about a situation where a faculty member had assigned a project for their students to do in her space, and throughout the course of the semester, there was a little bit of scope creep. The project got more and more complicated and complex, and it got to the point where she had to step in and do several 10, 12-hour days in a row where she was doing rather advanced stuff on the CNC router for the students so that they could hope to have their projects finished by the end of the semester. So we could summarize that by saying scope creep in the assignments or faculty assigning unrealistic projects for the space.
Chris Thompson also shared a story about a student who was using earbuds within the shop. That was against policy, and so when asked, the student picked up the tools and started to head out in order to continue working elsewhere. At that point, Chris had to step in and point out that the rules also meant that the student could not remove the tools from the space. And so, at that point, Chris had to have a difficult discussion with a student who was feeling irate at the existing policies.
Rodney Rojas from SciArc out in California wrote in to talk about students who seem to be encouraged not to take no as an answer. These are the students who will repeatedly ask for exceptions to the policies. Hey, can I come in early? Can I stay late? Can I bend this rule? Can I make more than others? Can I borrow this tool? Even though they know it's against the policy, students will push the boundaries as far as you let them. And you're the Makerspace manager. You need to deal with all of these situations. Fortunately, there's a way to think about these things that helps you figure out what to do in the moment. It allows you to have a game plan even before some new oddball situation happens. And what we're recommending that you do is to differentiate all of these bizarre things that can happen into really two basic situations that can happen. One is customer service, when a user approaches you with a need, and the other is enforcing policies, when you need to approach users about something they're doing that's against policies. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how we do customer service and how we enforce policies in our Makerspace.
So let's start by talking about customer service. That is, when users approach you in order to deal with their problems. Maybe they're irate or maybe not. We teach a particular customer service model called Clara in order to prepare our student workers with the skills necessary to handle even these difficult users. Clara is an acronym. It's C for center, L for listen, A for affirm, R respond, and A for add. So as soon as a user approaches, our students will work through this process in order to address their concerns. So let's go from the top. A user walks up to me and presents me with a problem. Perhaps they're frustrated or angry or they're having a poor experience. So I start with C, center. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to turn my attention to the user and set an intention to help. This is particularly useful because if a user is irate and approaches in an aggressive manner, I can feel threatened or I can feel stressed or I can respond in kind. Here, I'm going to assume positive intent. The user is talking to me because they believe that I can help them. So I'm going to center, calm myself down, and set an intention to help.
Can we do an example? Maybe, Ray, the laser cutter didn't cut all the way through.
Here's the sound of me centering.
So what'd you do? You took a deep breath and you say, I can help you with that.
After I've set that intention, then I'm going to listen, L. So I'm going to pay attention to the user and listen with the intent to understand, not to respond. At this point in the process, I'm only seeking to understand, what is this user trying to tell me? What problems are they encountering? Why are they feeling this way?
So let's continue our example. I come up to Ray and I say, Ray, the laser cutter didn't cut all the way through. He centers, takes a deep breath, and says, I can help you with that. Then it's time to listen. So Ray says,
what seems to be the problem?
Well, let me tell you all about what I tried. I tried this and this and this, and it still didn't cut all the way through.
So after Ian tells me about his problems, the next thing I'm going to do is affirm, A. I'm going to acknowledge and recognize what he has experienced without opinion or judgment. At this point, I'm turning my active listening into some sort of action. I say, Ian, I hear that the laser cutter didn't cut all the way through, and that can be very frustrating. I'm putting myself in Ian's shoes so that I can show some empathy and acknowledge their emotions as valid. That puts us on the same side of this issue. We are both here working to address the problem that the laser cutter has provided.
I like this guy who's helping me. He doesn't seem annoyed or frustrated that I'm coming to him for help. He seems like he genuinely wants to help me. He gets it.
So at that point, now we can start to ask some questions and get clarification. Maybe Ian didn't try something that he might have otherwise. At this point, I'm just seeking to make sure that I understand the whole problem. So I'm going to ask questions and get clarification. That's how I start my response. So Ian, did you check the laser power reading posted today?
Yeah, it said it was posted at 70 watts, but I didn't really know what that meant, so I just used the settings I remembered from last time.
Oh, okay. So at this point, now I can start to add information into the conversation. I've identified what might be Ian's problem. So I'm going to add information. I'm going to provide this context and potential solutions so that Ian can feel that we're working towards a solution. Ian, when you use the laser cutter, the power can fluctuate over the course of the semester. That's why we take the laser power reading so that you can easily look up the best speed and power settings for your material. Why don't we go check out your settings and make some adjustments to see if we can ensure that your part will cut through this time.
So in this episode, we're going to challenge ourselves to apply our model, CLARA, center, listen, affirm, respond, and add, to those other stories that we heard earlier that were brought up on the SSMC list. I'm going to pick an example here. I'm going to pick students asking for exceptions to policies. This happens all the time. You've got stress of the end of the semester coupled with frustration over things not working right the first time or not working as expected. And students can be in a real state of distress. I've seen students tear up and they say, oh my gosh, there's no way I can finish this before the deadline unless, is there any way you can stay 6 hours late so you can help me finish my project? Students asking for exceptions to policies. So if I'm going to apply the CLARA framework, first, center. So I'm feeling a little angry. I'm feeling a little underappreciated. I've put in hundreds or thousands of hours at that point in this fiscal year, and a student's asking me to sacrifice my personal time to help them. And you're tempted to say, well, you know what, a lack of planning on your part doesn't really constitute an emergency on my part. But I don't say that out loud. I take a deep breath before we begin talking about this so that I don't come across as upset. Then I listen. I say, hey, tell me what's going on. Tell me all about your project. So I listen. They tell me how they had this problem, they had that problem. They misunderstood what the deadline was. They misunderstood the deliverables. All their teammates quit, right? I'm just listening and I'm hearing what they're saying. And then I've got to affirm their situation. Hey, I hear you. I get it. That sounds really difficult. Your entire team quit. That's got to be frustrating. That's got to be hard to deal with. You're in a tough spot right now. So next up, I get the chance to respond. I can ask some questions. I can get clarification. What class is this for? What professor is this for? Can you give me the specifics about this project? Which parts of the project were you assigned to versus the teammates that left? And then I can add information to the conversation. I can say, you know what? I get it. This is frustrating. Your teammates quit. The machine wasn't working as expected today. There was a much longer line the last day that we're open for the semester than there typically is, and that wasn't something you expected. I get it. I'll tell you what. I can't stay 6 hours late today, but what I can do is I can reach out to your professor and I can validate these particular points. I can validate and assure your professor that there were these particular troubles, and we can see if there's not a smaller independent project or a write-up project you can do so that you can get the grade that you deserve. So that's how you can use CLARA for customer service. But what about enforcing policies? You see somebody who's wearing earbuds in the shop when they shouldn't be. You see somebody using PVC inside the laser cutter when we all know it produces a dangerous chlorine gas that can hurt people, and it can corrode the lenses and the mirrors and also the stainless steel shafting inside the laser cutter. So people are breaking the rules, and you've got to approach them with that critical feedback. What do you do?
We use a 4-part feedback model that we've adapted from Manager Tools, the most popular podcast for managers. This 4-part feedback model gives us a reliable framework that we can use to enforce policy. The first step is to insert yourself. We put ourselves into this situation. The user may or may not know that they're violating policy, so we have to put ourselves into that situation and say, hey, can you pause what you're doing for a second? What's going on? Then, in step 2, we're going to describe the observable behaviors of what the user is doing that violates policy. In the story shared by Mike, he saw a student wearing earbuds. That is immediately obvious as a break in policy. Then we can move on to step 3, where we describe the policy and its consequences. Mike might have said, hey, we have a no earbuds policy in the shop. Earbuds tend to distract people from what they're doing, and the dangling wires can increase the risk for accidents. At this point, we've inserted ourselves, we've described observable behaviors, and now we're informing the user about the policy. Finally, in step 4, we make a request for change. We focus on the future, and we work with user in order to define what it is we want to see happening in the future. So Mike might have said, hey, can you go ahead and put those earbuds away? And if you see anyone else wearing earbuds, can you remind them about the policy? That way he's involving the student in the policy enforcement so the student can feel that it is fairly applied and knows what to do in the future.
So what does that sound like from start to finish? You walk up to a user, they're using a mill, and they're also wearing earbuds, which is a violation of policy in a metal shop. What do you say?
So you say, hey, can you pause what you're doing for a second? I see that you're wearing earbuds. We have a no earbuds policy in this shop because it tends to distract people and increase the rate of accidents. Now, could you help me out and put those away? And if you see anyone else wearing earbuds, can you remind them about the shop policy?
That's terrific. It gives that person respect. It gives them the benefit of the doubt. It focuses on the positive change you want to see in the future. Wonderful. Clear, direct, but not aggressive communication. So we can apply this 4-part framework to another example, maybe Melissa's example from University of Virginia. She wrote in about a faculty member who had an expanding project that sort of took over the shop and made her life very difficult for a brief amount of time. Now, a faculty member might be a peer or might be sort of somebody up the chain a little bit, and you've got to have that sort of conflict discussion with them, but you want it to be clear and direct and respectful, really no matter who you're talking to. So you can walk up, and step 1, you just sort of introduce yourself to that faculty member, insert yourself into a conversation. Hey, do you have a minute? You describe the observable behaviors. I remember we talked about your class project at the beginning of the semester, and later on in the semester, I heard from some students that the deliverables had been expanded. So those are observable behaviors. You remember that you talked, and you know that you heard from the students that the deliverables had expanded. There's no arguing those observations. Now it's time to describe the consequences of those observable behaviors. So to get this done, I ended up spending 31 hours over the course of 3 days to run your students' jobs myself for efficiency, because it really was the only way to finish all these jobs by the deadline. And I care about these students. I care about your class. I wanted them done by the deadline. And now at step 4, you can request that change. In future semesters, can I count on you to talk to me before you change the project so that I can weigh in and let you know what's possible?
In all of these situations, you want to start by assuming positive intent wherever possible. So for example, if it looks like someone is making a weapon or going into small-scale manufacturing in your shop, you might want to start off with a clarifying question. Maybe that part that they're making 1,000 times over is actually a single part of a larger project, maybe a robot. Or maybe something that looks like a gun is actually a prototype for a surgical drill. We ask these clarifying questions in the first step when we insert ourselves into the situation. We get the information we need to enforce policy and understand what's going on. That might sound like this. Hey, I'm going to insert myself. Can I talk to you for a second? What are you making here? What am I looking at? With these questions, we start to put ourselves alongside that user and get more information. We get to learn what it is that they're laser etching, even if maybe it's very apparent that they're coasters that they're going to turn around and sell on Etsy. Then you can describe the observable behaviors once you get that information. Okay, so I see that you're making more than 10 of these coasters. At this point, you can introduce the policy and the consequences. Well, I need to let you know that we have a no manufacturing policy. We only allow these machines to be used for making 10 or less of an item. And we have to have that policy because we want these machines to stay available for everyone to use. If people are making more than 10 of an item, they're sort of hogging the machine. So then I can move on to request for change. I'm using my assumption of positive intent to help this user understand that I'm on their side and I want them to be able to work in this space. So I'd say, I'll need you to go ahead and stop making these here today, but if you're interested in really turning this laser etching into a business, I can help you find a good manufacturing process so you can make as many of these as you want. And if they actually took us up on the offer, we could connect them with resources like Pinocchio.com, a local trophy store, or sign-making shops. We could talk to them about how they would buy their own laser cutter or investigate other processes like die stamping and die sublimation printing. So that's how we would enforce policies using the 4-part feedback model that we've adapted from Manager Tools podcast.
And that's it. Makerspaces are really crazy places to work. At some point, you'll have to deal with upset users, and at some point, you'll have to deal with people breaking policies or making your life miserable in other ways. But having frameworks like the ones we mentioned today can help you keep your cool in stressful times as you deal with the difficult situations you'll run into as a Makerspace manager.
When a user approaches us with an issue, we enter customer service mode with the Clara model, where we center, listen, affirm, respond, and add information in order to put ourselves on the same side as the user, get all the information we need, and start to provide additional information and solutions so that that user can hopefully achieve their goals while following the policies and procedures of the Makerspace.
And when we have to enforce policies, when we've got to walk up to a user and tell them, hey, sorry, you can't do that here, we follow the 4-part feedback model that we went over in the podcast. First, insert yourself, then describe the observable behaviors that you're seeing, followed by describing the consequences for doing those behaviors, and finally requesting change, all in a positive way that shows respect to the user and assumes that they weren't intending to break the policies. That's all for today. Tune in next time for more Makerspace management tips. Until then, I'm Ian Charnas.
And I'm Ray Craggy, and this has been Makerspace Podcast. See you next time.
If you find this show valuable, please take 60 seconds and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or YouTube. If you can raise the visibility of Makerspace Podcast, it helps people find this show and join the conversation. Finally, if you know someone who is building or running a Makerspace or thinking about it, consider sharing this with them.
You can find us online at makerspacepodcast.com or send us an email with your questions and feedback to info@makerspacepodcast.com. Special thanks to Kate Hart for our theme music.